Speaking the truth to the state capitol. This is Drive Time Lincoln with the Commander, Jack Riggins. On the voice of Lincoln, 1499.3 KLIN.
All right, Monday, February 20th, 2023. Happy President's Day. I guess stay tuned for L&K Today tomorrow, because Johnny and I were just listening to the end of that Husker game, and I'm pretty sure they're going to have a lot to talk about. It didn't sound like anybody's voice, Greg Sharp calling the game, was too excited, given as that played out, and I believe it ended a little bit early. But anyway, hey, we've got a really short, maybe 15, 20 minutes, Drive Time Lincoln. I'm your host, Jack Riggins, restoring American values, bringing common sense to the capital city. Johnny Cadillac's executive producing the show. That's probably, Johnny, don't you think, the most baseball we'll listen to all year, unless it's pregame before that?
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right, President's Day, folks. We could talk about that in this short little segment. Obviously, it's a federal holiday. It's celebrated on the third Monday in February. Today, meaning in these days. It was originally established in 1885 in recognition of President George Washington, and it became more popular after 1960 and finally in 1971 in the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, where, as you can imagine, a senator from Illinois thought this would be a great idea and kind of weaved President Lincoln into that. And so, at least for me growing up, I always remember President's Day about President Washington and President Lincoln. And there would be lots of, drawings and cardboard cutouts and, little things we do to study the history. Of course, we would talk about President Lincoln growing up, as well as President Washington. I have to say, as a young American, right, they do make it interesting. You almost feel as if, the cartoon version, and then as you maybe go on to study history, you learn a little bit more about their actual actions. But nonetheless, I think a good holiday, and honestly, it actually is to honor all U.S. presidents, past and present. And while you and I certainly won't agree with them all politically, I will say this. I have always said I would never want to be the president because of all the stress and the responsibility that the position holds. And so, regardless of the politics, I think they're due respect, all of them, past, present, current, because of the position. It's an important position in our government and the executive power. So we celebrate today, President's Day. And obviously, some of you probably know the news about former President Carter now being in hospice at his home in Georgia. I think that's just good to remember him. I find Jimmy Carter and his history and what I know about it to be, I don't want to say tragic. I want to say I'm not so sure in modern history of such a clear, good, and moral man as Jimmy Carter, whose presidency was not well. I mean, it wasn't received well by most Americans and history, right? And he has just such an amazing story. Former naval officer, submariner. Actually had Paul Holt on, who is a listed submariner. Very special breed of character in our United States Navy. And he served there, and obviously we all know he went on to be president in the late 70s, and just continued to essentially do a lot socially and really spiritually. I mean, he's just a man who's deeply giving. And so that's why I say a little bit tragic, at least in history, that, I guess that shows you that politics doesn't exactly equal up to, the goodness of the man, because I think it for what I'm trying to say is, without a doubt, Jimmy Carter is a good man, great American, and you can't ask for better. And the presidency just didn't work out. But in the end, I don't think that God, or wherever you believe you go or don't go, really just judges you on your 4 years as a presidency. And so I just, for Jimmy Carter and his family, wish him the best as he really goes into old age. I think he's 93. So let's remember him on President's Day as well. Interesting story as I was researching a little bit about President's Day and thinking about clearly some of the divisiveness in American politics today. And I'll be honest, I stumbled upon something that I had no idea occurred. So I believe this was the third presidential election in American history. And so my question would be, in this short show, was anybody aware that our vice president got in a duel, literally a duel, with Alexander Hamilton? So Aaron Burr was his name, and they became very, Jimmy Carter's 98. Thanks, Johnny. 98, not 93. There you go. 8-3 in the teletype, looks about the same. But again, wishing him the best and his family. Man's lived an incredible life. A lot to be proud of. And I'm sure he's going to go to a good place whenever that is. Again, in hospice, thought I'd mention it during President's Day. But going back to the divisiveness of politics, in the third election, I mean, you've got to read up on it. Bottom line is, these two were political rivals, so to speak. And, I mean, Hamilton detested Burr. And he would often say, I feel it is a religious duty to oppose his career. So ultimately, again, in this third presidential election, Burr had joined Thomas Jefferson's Democrat-Republican ticket, which, did you hear me? Democratic-Republican ticket. Interesting, right? Versus Federalists. At least history.com would say that the Democratic Republican side of the party was a forerunner of today's Democratic Party. I'll take them at their word for that. But anyway, and again, John Adams was running under the Federalist ticket with Alexander. Anyway, not with Alexander Hamilton, but he won the presidency, and then that was in 1796, and then in 1800, Jefferson and Burr ran again. Excuse me, they did run again, and I mean, you can imagine, I mean, this is getting really heated, and, imagine what we're doing today. And ultimately, the reason I bring it up is because, we just had, 15 votes for Speaker of the House. The truth is when this went to the electoral college and works, and I'm paraphrasing here, folks. I'm not a history expert, but I'm just trying to tell a story. There was a technicality. I mean, can you imagine that today if there was a technicality? So, this gave Jefferson a victory, and a constitutional crisis ensued. And they had 35 tie votes, and eventually what happened is Federalists changed sides in the vote and went in Jefferson's favor. And what had happened was Alexander Hamilton kind of threw his weight around in there to get that done. He thought that Jefferson would be the lesser of two evils, and so he was instrumental in breaking the deadlock between all of that. Long story short, eventually these two very, very senior government officials, I mean, Alexander Hamilton of Alexander Hamilton fame, and all of that, that was it. They said they were going to go do a duel. Literally, they're going to pull out pistols and settle it. And they did. And And in the end of the day, a lot of conflicting views, at least in history. But Burr shot Alexander Hamilton, and that is how Alexander Hamilton died. Why am I telling that story on President's Day? Because no matter how frustrated you get with current American politics, it isn't that bad. It's not that bad. I mean, you go back and you read some of the first, and I'm sure we could get a historian in here and go election by election for president, and the shenanigans and the stuff that went on. Unbelievable. I just didn't know that. I didn't know that, hey, I don't agree with you in Washington. Let's just go settle it on this hill with a duel. And they did it. So, anyway, that was on July 11th, 1804. So it's not that bad, folks. We're still talking. We're still communicating. And let's not go back to that. That's my point. Let's not go back to that. Let's take President's Day to realize and honor all presidents, past and future. Again, most of us just think of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln on that day, but in fact, it's for all presidents. And let's also remember that people very close to the presidency in 1804 just settled things with a duel. And I mean, if there isn't a line that makes sense today a little bit, that's right there when Hamilton says straight up, I feel it is a religious duty to oppose his career. That is, you hear some of that today. But anyway, pretty interesting and, just shocking, I guess is my word. Shocking. Locally, in this short show, Matt Schulte, County Commissioner, was on. This is gaining some traction in the press, kind of on all venues, but he did, in fact, call for a vote to end the COVID-19 declaration of emergency. He laid it out on this show Thursday, and I think it's just kind of telling that the state ended theirs in June 2021, and that was 20 months ago, and here we are in Lancaster County in the city of Lincoln, and we're still in it. That's going to be an interesting vote, and I'm going to tell you why, because he's the really kind of level-headed Republican on a very outnumbered county board. I mean, it's a very Democrat board. It'd be interesting to see, because I think every logical Lancaster County person, including everybody in Lincoln, understands there's no reason for us to be in a declaration, COVID emergency declaration. I mean, I can't imagine how a representative of a district in the county could go forth and actually vote to continue that. And so my point is, I think we should watch it, because it really would show if there's some hyper-partisanship going on down there. I mean, this should be pretty easy. Matt Schulte's called for it. Everybody's made aware of it. Again, it's been in the Journal-Star. It's been on this show. We're talking about it again. There's been news stories. Okay, you've got the facts. Those are our representatives. Why would we have that? So that's going to be interesting. I don't know which way it would go. I mean, based on everything I say on this show, I don't have a lot of faith that it won't be hyper partisanship on that vote. And I think that would just be sad. I think it would be sad to continue, not that it's affecting you and I to a degree, but it would be sad because it would be showcasing the hyper-partisanship of our county board and things we've come to know from city council and maybe even city hall. And we'll see there. Just interesting. Just can't believe that. I mean, when I saw that kind of break last week, I was like, huh? I was like, you got to come on the show and tell everybody about that, because I don't think anybody was tracking that was a real thing. So who knows there? Oh, don't forget, I've talked about this. I think this is a great exhibit going around. We've got a good story by Mr. Wheeler on KLIN.com. You can also read about the vote for the COVID declaration on KLIN.com. But I've talked about this before, and I'll continue to. Traveling exhibit from the Smithsonian titled America Democracy, A Great Leap of Faith, opened up at the Nebraska History Museum, and it's going to run all the way through May 20th. I think it would be well worth every citizen's time to go check that out. Not just yourself, but take the kids. It basically begins with the creation of American democracy and kind of moves and talks about all the analytical ideas about how the government can represent the common citizen and the evolution of voting, and just continued as we have gone in civic engagement. And I just don't think that there's ever, even if it's a story as silly as Aaron Burr shooting Alexander Hamilton, I don't think you can ever learn too much about your own country's history to start to put things into perspective to where we are today, and ultimately inform your opinion that you can then go use your civic duty, which freedom provides, to go vote, and be an educated voter. It's pretty interesting. One of the other things going on nationally, I'll just talk about it, will involve another president, is wow. I mean, just a lot of people, depending on which station you go to, about Joe Biden visiting Ukraine. I don't know how I feel about that. One, clearly there's a strategy there that not many of us are privy to, with the funding and some of the materials going over to Ukraine. I will say this, it's not uncommon for a president to visit, although we're not, quote unquote, engaged in Ukraine. We are certainly behind Ukraine, and America is supporting. And so, he went over there. Why do I find it interesting? I find it interesting that there's more FaceTime from our president in Ukraine than our southern border, when we have more illegal people in our country than there are Russians invading Ukraine. I just find that interesting. 1499.3 KLIN.
You're getting the 411 from DTL with Commander Jack Riggins on 1499.3 KLIN.
All right, folks, if you're listening, we had a quarter show today due to Husker baseball. We'll have full shows the rest of the week. Like I said, the LNK Today crew will probably have a lot to talk about with Husker baseball, just based on what I was listening to and the emotion in the announcers there. Didn't sound like too good a one. Happy President's Day. It is President's Day today. We broke down a little bit about what it's about, and gave you a little tidbit there about Aaron Burr shooting Alexander Hamilton, the most famous duel in Washington politics. Who would have thought? Who would have thought they were out shooting each other? I'm glad we're not there. Don't want to see us ever go there again, without a doubt. And again, best to President Jimmy Carter, who's in hospice care. Probably means, he's just not all there anymore. But I just think, great man, great soul. Don't know why the presidency didn't work out, but whenever, just the fact he's in hospice, means he's not all there. That's sad for everybody, the family, and all of us. I think we are losing a great leader, just so to speak, even if it's not in Washington. Nebraska legislature's still going, so I think on tomorrow's Twitter Tuesday, Johnny and I'll try to find something, but we'll talk about where the legislature's at. I saw an article, I can't find it right now, but it seems like they thought the abortion at 6 weeks might go through. Maybe we'll talk about that. And there's many other bills, so we'll kind of break some of that stuff down, and we'll definitely have a Whatever Wednesday and open the call lines and figure out the rest of the week as we go. It's been a rough weekend, a lot of soccer down in Kansas City, a lot of volleyball up in Omaha. And so, just like you, I'm just trying to get the fire started for this week, and that's what we'll do. So, hope you enjoyed the short Drive Time Lincoln, and we will definitely see you tomorrow. Full show, 1499.3 KLIN.